Good morning from the Freedom of Information and Privacy Association. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, and this is your Access and Privacy Online News Summary for Saturday, January 24th. This week we're tracking a sharp escalation in surveillance and enforcement powers, from a BC municipality openly challenging a privacy watchdog's authority to U.S. immigration officers asserting the right to enter homes without a judge's warrant. We're also looking at how access to information requests continue to expose gaps in oversight. Whether that's contaminated land in Ontario, the limits of Canada's whistleblower protections, or the growing pressure on public transparency as AI, trade, and national security collide. And internationally, we'll examine how internet shutdowns and connected car technologies are reshaping privacy and access to information far beyond Canada's borders. Let's dive in. We begin in British Columbia with a case that directly builds on last week's discussion of surveillance oversight. The city of Richmond says it will fight an order from BC's privacy commissioner requiring the removal of high-definition surveillance cameras at a major intersection. The cameras were installed last February as part of a test surveillance project to collect footage of people, license plates, and vehicle features that could be provided to the RCMP to help identify criminal suspects. Privacy Commissioner Michael Harvey concluded the city lacked legal authority under provincial law to collect personal information using the system, and ordered the city to stop collecting footage, delete recordings, and disable the equipment. Harvey said in a news release there are situations that can justify the use of surveillance, but it must be limited and proportional. A Richmond councillor said the cameras were strictly for law enforcement and commented that we are under constant surveillance in today's day and age. Richmond officials argue the cameras are necessary for public safety and say the issue should now be decided by the courts. The case raises familiar concerns about scope creep, facial recognition capabilities, and whether existing laws are equipped to regulate rapidly expanding surveillance technologies. Staying with accountability and transparency, LGI reporter Maggie McIntosh at the Winnipeg Free Press reports that Manitoba has updated its public teacher registry to show when educators are under active investigation. Previously, teachers who voluntarily stepped away during investigations could still appear to be in good standing. Temporary suspension notices will now appear while investigations are ongoing, a move the province says balances transparency with employment privacy, though experts argue the registry still lacks sufficient context. Once the investigation is resolved, the label will be deleted, and the teacher may, depending on the result, end up on the disciplinary outcomes list. The registry's teacher profiles include current and former names, as well as their pay class and certificate standing. These profiles include limitations or conditions on an individual's license. And on Niagara-on-the-Lake, LJ reporter Paige Seaburn at the Lake Report explains how the town has updated its bylaw enforcement policy, requiring complaints to be documented and setting clearer rules for how frivolous or vexatious complaints are handled, while also protecting complainants' identities under privacy law. The updated bylaw sets out criteria officers will consider when deciding how to respond. This includes health and safety implications, potential property damage, impacts on the complainant and surrounding neighborhood, staff availability, and complaint history. Complaints or inquiries are generally required to come from identified individuals. However, officers may initiate investigations on their own if immediate health or safety threats are observed. On Gabriola Island, LGI reporter Hope Lompe at the Gabriola Sounder reports on an unresolved privacy breach involving decades of personnel records at the local fire district. The chair of the fire board said a computer left the fire hall without authorization that contained past employee personal data information. He called it a theft, although other trustees are quick to clarify the case has not been concluded as a theft. Trustees say they're cooperating with the privacy commissioner, but former employees have raised concerns about oversight and transparency in how the investigation is being handled. The breach could affect any person who worked for the fire hall between 1996 and 2015, up to 57 people. The district has the computer back in their possession and is investigating the scope of data and people affected. And finally, in this segment, LGI reporter Soumya Loya at Shooting the Breeze reports that RCMP in Pincher Creek are warning seniors about a surge in grandparent scams, including cases where fraudsters use voice cloning technology highlighting once again how emerging tech is being weaponized against vulnerable populations. The scam uses voice cloning technology to simulate the voices of seniors, grandkids, or other loved ones faking an emergency and urging them to send money. The RCMP urges people to watch out for key phrases such as act now, this is urgent, your account will be closed, or don't tell anyone. They also stress personal information like social insurance numbers, banking details, passwords, and verification codes should never be shared over the phone. Turning now to provincial stories shaped by access to information reporting. In British Columbia, Premier David Eby used a trade mission to India to promote BC mining and energy projects, while downplaying an RCMP document obtained through access laws that describe links between an organized crime group and the Indian government. Global News has said the report describes the India-based Lawrence Bishnoi crime group as allegedly acting on behalf of the Indian government. However, the Canadian press has not seen the document. The premier says the document summarized media reporting, not intelligence, underscoring ongoing questions about how access released records are interpreted in politically sensitive contexts. In St. Catharines, LGI reporter Ed Smith at The Pointer continues coverage on updated testing at the former GM site, which found no PCBs in one stormwater pond, but also highlights that documents obtained through FOI show large parts of the site remain untested, with filtration systems offline and oversight unclear. A released report from MTE Consultants is not a fulsome analysis of the current conditions at the former GM property. While providing some assurances about the quality of the stormwater at one part of the site, the report does not involve groundwater testing, historical discharges, or investigate any impacts regarding testing frequency and oversight responsibility. This ongoing coverage at The Pointer highlights the intersection of access to public accountability and the gap between what public bodies say versus what they know internally. Meanwhile, Paige Seaburn, LJ reporter from the Lake Report, brings us a story that Niagara-on-the-Lake Council is moving ahead with early planning for a former hospital site, amid public debate about transparency, pace, and whether decisions are being shaped before a full request for proposals process is launched. The chief administrator officer said a past request for information on the hospital site was too broad in its scope, meaning the town couldn't move forward with concrete ideas for the project. But the current report is meant to provide more clear direction up front. In Guysborough, Nova Scotia, LJ reporter Chloe Hannon reports on a new provincial digital platform intended to improve home care coordination. The platform will connect all publicly funded home care agencies with Nova Scotia Health's, or NHS's, continued care program. Provincial officials say the system is designed to reduce administrative burden on staff and help ensure care is delivered faster across the province. While officials say it will improve real-time access to information, rural providers point to ongoing challenges around staffing, geography, and data flow. And in Prince Edward Island, LGI reporter Pratik Bhattarai reports that a shrinking farm workforce, compounded by limits on immigration and unanswered information requests to government, is raising concerns about long-term sustainability in agriculture. This despite provincial departments' slow response to requests for information. Another factor is that not as many young people are getting interested in farming. Meanwhile, older people are having a hard time adapting to rapidly changing technology. Experts said promoting all aspects of agriculture among youth is essential to tackling the problem in the long term. Programs like Team Food Island and Agriculture in the Classroom look to get young people interested in agriculture to tackle this problem. At the national level, we begin with artificial intelligence and consent. The Federal Privacy Commissioner has launched an investigation into sexualized AI-generated deepfakes circulating on the X platform, expanding an existing probe into how Canadians' personal information is being used to train AI systems. The commissioner has also launched a related investigation into Elon Musk's xAI, the company behind Grok. The investigations will examine whether the companies obtained valid consent and whether current laws are adequate to address non-consensual synthetic imagery. In Canada, the Liberal government has introduced a bill that, once passed, would criminalize non-consensual intimate deepfakes, but experts have warned the definition of deepfake in the bill would not cover most of the images that have proliferated on X. Meanwhile, newly released documents show Canada's cyber spy agency breached the law by directing activities at a Canadian, a violation revealed only through an access to information request. The National Security and Intelligence Review Agency, Canada's intelligence watchdog, found that collaboration between agencies crossed legal boundaries, raising fresh concerns about oversight in national security operations. One such example was that Canadian Security Intelligence Service, or CSIS, sent the Communications Security Establishment, or CSE, information concerning the contents of a Canadian's device. The Canadian was the subject of a CSIS warrant, but the watchdog report reveals no additional details. The CSE analyzed the information with the intent to obtain foreign intelligence information from it. The CSE can acquire and use Canadian information under its foreign intelligence mandate if the information is collected incidentally, meaning the information was not deliberately sought and its collection was not directed at a Canadian or a person in Canada. The spy watchdog concluded that exception did not apply in this case. In other reporting, access requests have also revealed warnings from Canada's leading AI institutes that the country risks losing top researchers unless funding gaps are addressed, highlighting tensions between innovation, commercialization, and public accountability. The Canadian Institute for Advanced Research and the three national AI institutes, Mila, Vector, and AMI, told the government funding for a national AI research chair program is set to expire, depriving Canada of a means to recruit talent after March 31st, 2026. The groups asked for a $186 million top-up over 10 years, part of a $434 million fund that would also go towards supporting early-stage AI ventures and commercialization. And in whistleblowing, the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner is warning that without urgent funding, Canada's federal whistleblower system risks collapse, with backlogs growing and investigations delayed, potentially allowing wrongdoing to go unaddressed. The Public Sector Integrity Commissioner of Canada sent a letter to the Treasury Board president last week asking for a one-time injection of $6.7 million and around $14.3 million in additional funding per year. The commissioner said the funds are needed to allow the office to deliver on its mandate and investigate complaints from public servants who believe they have evidence of wrongdoing or who have suffered reprisals after coming forward or participating in an investigation of wrongdoing. Turning south of the border, OpenAI says it will soon introduce advertising into free versions of ChatGPT, raising new questions about data use, personalization, and whether free AI services inevitably turn users into products. OpenAI claims it won't use a user's personal information or prompts to collect data for ads, but the question is for how long, said an analyst at research group Forrester. The CEO of OpenAI has also assured that advertisements would not affect AI responses. In Tennessee, we see a disturbing story arise. A judge has ordered expanded media access to executions, affirming the public's right to observe state power in its most extreme form. Prison officials argued that the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution does not grant the press a right of special access to information not regularly available to the public. They claimed that the restrictions are necessary because allowing the press to see the full execution would endanger prison security and people involved in the process. The judge's order says members of the execution team shall wear a disposable protective suit covering the member's regular work uniform, identification badge, and hair. They will also be offered masks that are optional. In Washington, a Tennessee man has pleaded guilty to repeatedly hacking the U.S. Supreme Court's filing system more than 24 times, exposing how fragile government digital infrastructure can be. The man used stolen credentials to hack into the Supreme Court's filing system on 25 different days, a court filing says. He accessed personal records belonging to the person whose credentials he used, then posted information about the person on an Instagram account using the handle @IHackedTheGovernment. He also pleaded guilty to using stolen credentials to access a user's personal information from AmeriCorps' computer servers and from a U.S. Marine Corps veteran's account on the Department of Veteran Affairs' My Healthy Vet platform. In a story that surprises no one, newly disclosed court filings show that members of Elon Musk's Doge team may have misused Social Security data. even as the IRS announces leadership changes while insisting that safeguarding taxpayer privacy remains a priority. The June National Taxpayer Advocate report to Congress warned that the 2026 season could be rocky after a series of mass layoffs last year brought on by the Department of Government Efficiency. Meanwhile, newly released court papers say two DOJ employees were secretly in touch with an advocacy group looking to overturn election results in certain states. One may have signed an agreement that used Social Security data to match state voter rolls. With the DOJ breach and data misuse, we move to a cluster of stories that together show a sharp expansion of state power. Internal documents reveal that U.S. immigration officers are asserting authority to enter homes without a judge's warrant, relying instead on administrative warrants, a move whistleblowers say contradicts institutional protections. For years, immigrant advocates, legal aid groups, and local governments have urged people not to open their doors to immigration agents unless they are shown a warrant signed by a judge. The ICE directive directly undercuts that advice at a time when arrests are accelerating under the administration's immigration crackdown. According to a whistleblower complaint, while the memo itself isn't widely shared among ICE, its contents have been used to train new ICE officers who are being deployed into cities and towns to implement the president's immigration crackdown. This comes as the Justice Department vows prosecutions after activists disrupted a church linked to an ICE official. A livestream video posted on the Facebook page of Black Lives Matter Minnesota, one of the protest organizers shows a group of people interrupting services at the city's church in St. Paul by chanting "ICE out" and "Justice for Renee Good." Good was a mother of three killed by an ICE agent in Minneapolis. The protesters allege that one of the church's pastors, David Easterwood, also leads the local ICE field office overseeing the operations that have involved violent tactics and illegal arrests. The website of St. Paul-based City's Church lists David Easterwood as a pastor, and his personal information appears to match that of the David Easterwood identified in court filings as the acting director of the ICE St. Paul field office. Press freedom advocates are also sounding alarms after a Washington Post journalist's home was raided, warning it could chill reporting and deter whistleblowers. The journalist, nicknamed the Federal Government Whisperer at the Post for her reporting on President Donald Trump's changes to the federal workforce, had a phone, 2 laptops, and a Garmin watch seized at the Wednesday search of her Virginia home. A warrant for the raid said it was connected to an investigation into a government contractor accused of illegally retaining classified government materials. And in California, a federal judge has dismissed the Trump administration's attempt to compel states to hand over detailed voter data, calling the effort unprecedented and illegal. The Trump administration's lawsuit, filed last year, contended that California and other states were illegally blocking the federal government's wide-ranging effort to scrutinize detailed voter data that states said was private and protected. The department has sued 23 states, most of them controlled by Democrats, and the District of Columbia for detailed voter data that includes names, dates of birth, residential addresses, driver's license numbers, and partial Social Security numbers. Internationally, we begin with connected vehicles and trade. U.S. regulators have granted Tesla more time to respond to allegations that its self-driving technology violates traffic laws. An investigation of Tesla's full self-driving feature was opened after the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration said it had collected dozens of reports of the cars running red lights, driving on the wrong side of the road, or sometimes crashing into other vehicles and causing injuries. Meanwhile, Canada moves ahead with a new trade framework allowing Chinese electric vehicles into the Canadian market. Officials stress that any vehicle sold here must comply with Canada's privacy and data protection laws, regardless of where they're made. It's a bold claim and a great statement. However, as FIPA and others have identified in the past, when you drive a connected car, compliance with Canadian privacy law and the protection of your personal information is often sacrificed. And before we go, in Iran, the country's longest internet shutdown is strangling businesses and cutting people off from information, demonstrating how control over digital infrastructure has become a powerful tool of political repression, with devastating economic consequences. Officials have offered no firm timeline for the internet to return, leading to fears by businesses across the country about their future. The internet monitoring organization NetBlocks estimates each day of an internet shutdown in Iran costs the country over $37 million. The site says it estimates the economic impact of internet outages based on indicators from multiple sources, including the World Bank and the International Telecommunication Union, which is the United Nations specialized agency for digital technology. As always, we hope today's stories help you stay informed about the evolving challenges around privacy, access to information, and public accountability. A reminder, Bill C-4 is moving towards second reading in the Senate, and it's not too late to contact senators or your member of parliament. To help us keep the mics on, please subscribe through FIPA News Monitoring, or consider making a donation. Our writer is Sean Fisk. Original music is by Breakmaster Cylinder. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, your host and producer. Thank you for listening, and thank you to the reporters and outlets whose work makes this show possible. Stay safe and stay informed.